What is going on in the Knights of Wind and Truth prologue? Is Gavilar really talking to the Stormfather? Or could it really be Odium or Ishar or someone else? If it's not already obvious, this video is going to be chock full of spoilers for the entire Cosmere, so if you still have yet to speak your first oaths, this video is not for you. The Knights of Wind and Truth prologue is titled To Live and shows us the night of Gavilar's assassination from the fifth and final perspective, that of Gavilar Kholin. Okay, let's get into it. We start out with Gavilar believing he's on the verge of immortality. He's intent on becoming a herald. He merely has to find the right words in order to live forever. Spoiler alert. He dies. We begin with Gavilar presumably inside of one of the Stormfather's visions, just like the ones that Dalinar was shown in the Way of Kings, but this vision shows what seems to be the aftermath of the Aharietium, the Recreants. He admires the 9 honor blades stuck into the ground and wonders what his honor blade will look like once he becomes a herald. He speaks to the Stormfather. He speaks to the Stormfather about what he sees. Let me just say this right off the bat. I don't think this is the real Stormfather that Gavilar's talking to. And we find our first clue immediately when the Stormfaker tells Gavilar that he is seeking a new champion. Keep in mind that this is a time of peace. The Parshendi and the Alethi are literally on the best terms they've ever been and ever will be. Why then would the Stormfather be searching for a new champion during this time of peace? We saw him guide Dalinar through much more troubled times than this, and he never mentioned any contest of champions to Dalinar until Book 4. The first we ever really heard about the contest of champions was in Rhythm of War, when things were at their absolute worst during the true desolation. I don't know how reliable the Stormfaker is, since he ends up lying to Gavilar twice before the end of this prologue. Now we all know that the heralds are sketchy and they haven't been honest about what happened at the last desolation. Most of Roshar thinks that all 10 heralds are still on Braze and that there has not been a return. We also have strange lines like this, where Gavilar says to the Stormfaker, "You've never challenged what I'm doing." Gavilar said, "I would have thought that returning the Voidbringers would be opposed to your very nature." To which the Stormfaker replies, "Opposition is sometimes needed." Really? That's the best explanation? You will need someone to fight should you become champion. And this, Gavilar smiled, hefting the Fabrial and thinking of the Flamespren trapped inside. The Stormfather seemed increasingly suspicious, hostile. If things did go poorly, could he trap the Stormfather himself in one of these? The Stormfather we've seen Dalinar and Kaladin interact with through 4 books has never seemed suspicious or hostile, in my opinion. The weirdest thing is that the Stormfather appears differently than he's ever appeared before. In this prologue, he takes the vague shape of a human and actually walks and talks with Gavilar. Another potential clue is that in previous books, the Stormfather's dialogue was always in all caps, whereas here it's mostly in italics. There is a little section in all caps later, which is even more suspicious to me, but we'll get to that. Gavilar makes several attempts at speaking the words, and words is always capitalized, meaning the immortal words or the oaths. Usually these kinds of words are used to bond a spren, but in this case, it seems that he's looking for the words to become the Stormfather's champion. The Stormfather chides him and tells him he'll never be able to guess the words. Gavilar asks if the words are in the Way of Kings, and the Stormfather tells him that they are. Gavilar's final attempt at the words is as follows. Gavilar says, "Give it to me, now! Make me a herald! I need it!" And the Stormfather turns a shimmering head in his direction and says, "That was almost them." He says, "What? Those? A demand?" And the Stormfather says, "So close and so far." Okay, what? Gavilar sounds like a petulant child, demanding that the Stormfather makes him a herald right now. And the Stormfather says those were almost the words. Something doesn't smell right to me. So people are saying this sounds a lot like Odium's words to Dalinar at the end of Oathbringer, when he says, "Give me your pain." I think Odium's a reasonable guess as to who is impersonating the Stormfather here, because Odium can also generate visions and pull people inside of them, as we saw him do with Dalinar. I've also heard people say that the Mad Herald Ishar is the one who has been impersonating the Stormfather, which is another reasonable guess, considering Ishar is the one who created the Oath Pact, so he would know if one of the heralds died. We'll talk about that in a minute. Side note, when the Stormfaker feels the death of a herald, the internet seems pretty unanimous that he's feeling Shallan kill her mother, the herald, Shannarock, if I'm saying that right, Shannarock. We know that Talon has returned from Braze, but we also know that Talon didn't break. My personal opinion is that Shallan sent her mother, Shannarock, back to Braze when she killed her. And after 7.5 years, Shannarock is the one who broke, which is why we see Talon at the end of Oathbringer. So back to the Stormfaker and the night of Gavilar's assassination. We have some very special guests at the feast. 4 heralds are in attendance, namely Jezrien, Shallash, Nael, and Kalek. Shallash is the only one who made it through all 5 prologues without us having seen her. Or have we? Prior to the True Desolation, she was traveling the world destroying any depiction of herself she could find. In the Way of Kings prologue, Szeth walks through the garden and notices that the statue of Shallash is missing, presumably removed or destroyed by Shallash herself that very night. This is right about the same time Szeth passes Shallash's father, Jezrien, in the hallway, who is also a herald. Szeth's point of view shows us Jezrien, as well as a missing statue of Shallash, which indicates her presence. And Yasna's point of view shows us Nael and Kalak talking about Shallash and her obsession with defacing her own image. But to me, it's not that surprising that we don't see Shallash in the flesh, as she is a spy, known for infiltration, but Sanderson goes out of his way to let us know that she is here. To add to the clues from previous prologues, Kalek, aka Ristaris, tells Gavilar in this prologue, "You need to know that another of us is here tonight. I spotted her handiwork earlier. Shallash is known for breaking into palaces and well-guarded places, usually in order to deface her own image, but I don't think that was her only motive at this particular event." Another interesting tidbit about Shallash is that she also happens to be the patron herald of light weaving. Given all that we know of Shallash, I would expect that if we did see her, we would not know it was her. She would likely be either in the shadows somewhere, unseen, like the spy she is, or using light weaving to disguise herself as someone else. Perhaps to infiltrate a palace, perhaps even to influence a king who is messing with void light and trying to become a herald. Could Shallash have used her light weaving to pose as the Stormfather and show Gavilar a vision? If so, how long has she been manipulating Gavilar, and what does she want out of him? It would seem she wants an oath of some kind from him, and he got close. So close. "Give it to me," Gavilar said. "Now! Make me a herald. I need it!" Gavilar wants to become a herald. Is Shallash trying to manipulate him into taking her place in the Oath Pact? People have their suspicions as to why she defaces every instance of her own image, but I'm going to propose a reason I've never heard anyone mention before. What if it's not necessarily about her or about her image, but what if she's actually trying to remove herself from every artistic rendition of the Oath Pact because she desperately wants out, and now she's trying to get Gavilar to say the words that could set her free, so she never has to return to Braze. I think this passage is rather revealing. The Stormfather says, "It is not so grand as you think." "What isn't?" Gavilar asked. "Immortality," the Stormfather said. "It wears on men and women, weathering souls and minds. The heralds are insane, afflicted with unnatural ailments, unique to their ancient natures." "How long did it take," Gavilar asked, "for the symptoms to appear?" "Difficult to say. 1,000 years, perhaps 2. So I'm even more convinced that this is Shallash, or at the very least one of the heralds, when something happens to the Stormfaker. It appears to be in distress for a moment. Lightning flashes. It cries out with a peal of thunder, agonized, and says, "A herald! A herald has died! No! I'm not ready! The Oath Pact! No! They mustn't see! They mustn't know!" It's the "no, I'm not ready" for me. This is a herald who doesn't want to go back to Braze. Unless I'm mistaken, it would seem that all of the heralds, save for Talm, who was abandoned to Braze, have been living on Roshar for the past 2,000 years. Now, Shallash feels that one of the heralds has suddenly died after 2,000 years. This would probably send a wave of paralyzing fear through her, causing her to wonder who killed a herald and if they'll kill again. Maybe she'll be next. And what about the Oath Pact? No, they must not see. They must not know. Gavilar then responds, "Died? Died? You said they were already dead. You said they were in damnation." The Stormfather rippled, then a face emerged in the shimmer. 2 eyes, like holes in a storm, clouds spiraling around them and leading into the depths. "You lied," Gavilar said. "You lied!" Oh, Gavilar, there is so much you do not know, so much you assume, and the two never meet, like paths to opposing cities. Okay, at this point, 7.5 years before the story begins, readers know what's going on with the Oath Pact, but pretty much no one on Roshar does, save for the heralds themselves. Maybe the fact that one of the other heralds has been killed worries Shallash that someone has found out about their secret. Someone has found out that 9 of the heralds are still alive. In her panic, she gives her secret away to Gavilar. She lied to him about the heralds before, which we discovered in an earlier passage of the same prologue. Oh, storms, Gavilar knew, but tried to ignore that Rastaris pretended to be a herald to impress the others. The little man didn't know Gavilar had become familiar with the Stormfather, who had told him the truth, that the heralds had all long since died and gone to Braze. But if this is Shallash, why does she want a champion? Maybe she's found another way to end the Oath Pact. By challenging Odium, perhaps she could save not only herself but her father and the other heralds. Perhaps replacing herself with Gavilar is more of a plan B if the contest of champions doesn't go her way. Her aims and Gavilar's do not seem to align, and this passage is pretty telling. It starts when Gavilar speaks about having 1,000 or more years to find a solution once he becomes a herald, to which the Stormfaker replies, "I have not promised you this boon. You guess it is what I offer, but I seek only a champion. Still, tell me, would you accept the cost of becoming a herald? Everyone you know would be dust by the time you return." One more interesting exchange is that Gavilar calls the heralds the 10 fools for staying dead instead of just returning immediately. The Stormfaker realizes that seeking Gavilar was a mistake. Gavilar has no reverence for the position he seeks, and would not be willing to endure torture on Braze to prevent war. So this right away indicates to me that her making Gavilar a herald is a possibility, or at least was until a moment ago. Gavilar later asks the Stormfaker, "What are you?" To which the Stormfaker replies, "The biggest fool of them all." I think that this is an intentional reference to Gavilar equating the 10 heralds to the 10 fools. Gavilar says that the heralds are the 10 fools, and she says, "I'm the biggest fool of them all." I think it's a veiled admission that she is in fact one of the heralds. Immediately after this exchange, in the same paragraph, the Stormfather's dialogue suddenly switches to all caps, indicating that the real Stormfather is speaking to him now. The real Stormfather says, "Goodbye, Gavilar. I have seen a glimpse of what is coming. I will not prevent it." Now this seems a lot more like the real Stormfather to me. Immovable, unswayable, stoic. Later, the italicized Stormfaker comes back to talk with Gavilar as he lay dying. But that's about it for why I think that the Stormfaker is really the herald Shallash. Sanderson is always catching me off guard and surprising me, so while this is my going theory, I can certainly be convinced otherwise, and I wouldn't be surprised if Brando Sando pulls the rug out from all of us and does something none of us saw coming. So what do you think? Is this the real Stormfather or an imposter? If it is an imposter, who is Gavilar really talking to? Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.